Every story has its origins, and before we had the Dark Crystal novelization or the Dark Crystal script, we had an early story concept known as the Crystal, which we'll be looking at today. Well, howdy y'all, and welcome to the Dark Crystal Conjunction. Today we're going to be looking at the early story concept for the Dark Crystal, known simply as the Crystal. This 20-page presentation pitch booklet was published by Jim Henson, Brian Froud, and Michael Frith in 1978. The brochure featured text based on Jim and Cheryl Henson's initial story outline, which we talked about in that first trivia video we did last week. A reproduction of the initial brochure was released with the collector's edition re-release of The World of the Dark Crystal in 2003, and again recently in the 2017 The Dark Crystal, The Ultimate Visual History. The 2003 The World of the Dark Crystal says that this is, quote, a fascinating booklet Froud and Henson created to present the film to its early backers. A gorgeous overview of the story so rare only a few copies are known to exist, end quote. In Brian Froud's intro for the 2003 publication, labeled Journey into the Dark Crystal, he says, quote, with our prototype work well underway, Jim decided to produce a little book we called The Crystal. This limited edition publication gave shape to our creative musings and at the same time served as a device for Jim to attract financial backing for the project. The booklet was assembled from my first conceptual drawings and designed by Michael Frith, a Henson art director and Muppet designer at the time. The Crystal marked the end of the first stage of our creative journey, the early development phase of the picture. It would be another 4.5 years of continuous work until we saw our dreams on the big screen, and certain story elements changed during those years. In The Crystal, Kira is called Dee, for example. But the concept booklet set out our film with sepia tone lines, drawings, and a simple statement of our tale, end quote. Author of the 2017 Ultimate Visual History, Cassian Gaines, said this of it, quote, the book is a pitch book that was created to interest potential backers in the Dark Crystal back in its earliest days of pre-publication, end quote. Do note that the 2017 reprint of The Crystal is missing several pages that you'll find in the 2003 edition. Anyways, in this pitch booklet, which we are now going to look at, all of the characters and species, except for Jen, have slightly different names. For example, we have Skeksis instead of Skeksis, Orurs instead of Uru or the Mystics, Dee instead of Kira, Earth people instead of Pod people, and Garthem instead of Gartham. Plus, we also have the pics of the miners, what it looks like, and their descriptions. But anyways, let's crack this open and get to reading the original The Crystal. The Crystal, a fantasy adventure film, conceived by Jim Henson, designed by Brian Froud, dimensionalized by the Muppets. Froud and his drawings. Copyright Henson Association Incorporated, 1978. The Crystal takes place in a world unlike anything we have ever seen. Beautiful, mysterious, sometimes frightening, always magic. It is a world inhabited by creatures unimaginably strange. A world where even the forces of nature are possessed of intelligence, where mountains move and rivers whisper the songs of the ages. Over all this rules a cruel and evil race called the Skeksis. The story is that of a youth named Jen, who has been raised in a remote and quiet valley by a gentle race of wise but unworldly mystics known as the Orurs. Jen is suddenly wrenched from his secure and tranquil life and thrust into the midst of a cosmic struggle between good and evil, a struggle upon which depends the future of his entire world. This world is an unfamiliar one to the sheltered Jen. The forests are filled with all manner of creatures. They hop, crawl, skitter, and dart through the tangles of trees and vines, some sweetly singing, some shrieking, some chattering in their own almost decipherable languages. Some are charming, some seem filled with menace. In this world, there are no clear lines between the kingdoms of plant and animal. Rocks and roots, weeds and waterfalls, all are aware and, in their various ways, can converse. There are fast-moving, flesh-eating flowers. There are bears that stand rooted to the spot and draw their nourishment from the sun. Along the way, Jen meets a girl, Dee. Jen and Dee are of a race called Gelflins. They are the only creatures of their kind left in their entire world. Because of a prophecy that someday the Skeksis dynasty would be destroyed by the Gelflins, these cruel rulers have methodically exterminated them. All but Jen, brought up under the protection of the Auror's magic, and Dee, who has survived hidden deep in the wildest swamps and forests where even the terrible warriors of the Skeksis fear to go. But the swamps and forests have become a home for Dee. She knows the language and the ways of their creatures, and they hold no danger for her. The palace of the Skeksis was once magnificent. The Skeksis have inherited it from the previous rulers, a legendary tribe of wise and noble beings that vanished mysteriously long ago. Now the Skeksis move through its elegant halls, dressed in decadent splendor. Velvets chassis with gold, luxurious laces, and jewel-encrusted brocades, surrounded by opulence beyond the dreams of avarice. But all around them are evidences of corruption and decay, and the grandeur of the past has been dimmed by their filth and by the shadow of their evil. Beneath the palace wind miles of labyrinthine caverns where a gentle race of tireless burrowers, enslaved by the Skeksis, endlessly mines for gems and precious metals. Around the palace are the houses of the Earth People, farmers who live in constant terror of the raids of the Skeksis warriors, raids in which some will be carried off to become mindless palace slaves. The brutal warriors, through whom the Skeksis exert control over their world, are called the Garthim. These fierce and remorseless creatures are encased in massive, shell-like armor through which only their piercing eyes are visible. The Garthim follow the commands of the Skeksis unquestionably. If a Skeksis is displeased with a warrior, he gives a signal, and the Garthim instantly turn on their fellow soldier, crush his armor with their powerful claws, and devour him. The Crystal. Deep in the heart of the palace, closely guarded, lies the mysterious crystal, focal point of the Skeksis' twisted ritual, the key to their awful power, the vital missing link in the lives of the mystic Aurors, and the shimmering end to the young Gelflin's perilous quest. Only through the magic of the crystal can Jen and Dee bring an end to the terror that blights their land. Together they struggle through the terrible dangers and hardships as they make their way towards the palace, the glowing stone hidden within it, and a startling climax which fulfills their destiny and restores harmony to their world.